Hey everybody. I wanted to take a minute to talk about my next project. So, um, it, one of the things that I like about this hobby is getting an opportunity to learn something more, and this is a prime example of that. So, this kit was manufactured or distributed by American Telasco Limited. Designed and engineered by Paul Delgato. Apparently, he, uh, I guess, published a series of articles for, um, I don't know, Model Airplane Magazine, Flying Models Magazine, under the header of PDG. I guess that's his initials, Paul Delgato. And so this was a person of some renown back in the late 50s and early 60s. This model incorporates the JetX motor, the JetX Spacemaster 600A, which was a sort of low-powered rocket motor. Ran on something called, it was like a pellet that created a sort of a salt reaction. It was a salt-based fuel, and what you did was put a couple of pellets of it, depending on how much, how long you wanted the thrust or the engine to run, and it would create, sort of a mediocre thrust. Where the motors are most, I guess, familiar would be to anybody who remembers the Super Marionette television shows of the early 60s, Stingray and Thunderbirds and all that. Because that's any of the Super Marionation TV series, they use the JetX motors to provide that vehicle exhaust effect for their for the television show, for the vehicles that they produced and made for the show. It's called guanidine nitrate, the little pellets that they use. It's a chemical compound, colorless water-soluble salt. So you put these pellets in there, I guess, add water, and it would the engine would generate thrust of some kind. So American Telasco produced these kits. Paul Delgado was a designer of aircraft models and other vehicles designed around the JetX motors. And apparently he was, for that time period anyway, a pretty big name for model design, aircraft model design. And I'm lucky enough, I guess, here now to have a copy of American Telasco's Cougar F8. And so I, knowing that, now that it's tied to a bit of history, it's information that I can appreciate. And, for motivation, for the idea of I don't know, I guess fidelity to the intention of the original designer. It's something that motivates me to do the best job I can do. I'm going to again infill this, and so change a little bit about what the intent of the original designer's plan was. His incorporation of the jet engine, I'm going to be omitting that. The idea of using tissue covering on that, I'm going to do a solid infill the way I normally do. I'm going to build up the cockpit, get as many reference photos as I can of what that should look like, and go off of those. I'm going to make proper landing gear for it, and I'm going to probably cut out the wheel wells and detail those as best I can. And I also want to, there's provision for ducting. This model kit will have, incorporates a method for ducting each of the, ducting through each of the bulkheads here that lead to the, where the engine would have been located. So I'm going to replicate that ducting as best I can. And if I can determine that it would be visible when looking through the inlet of this airplane through that ducting, and might be possible to even see where the face of a jet turbine engine would be, I may go ahead and replicate just the face of that engine, a proper engine, a proper whatever that Grumman power plant was. I'll see if I can replicate the face of that and place it in there where it can be seen if one looks through the ducts. That's if I can determine that can be seen at a point where I can still install that into the model. And that's my plan for the build. But there's so much about this airplane that comes together in this kit. The Grumman F9F-8 Cougar was actually a modification to the earlier Grumman Panther, the F9F, I guess 1 through 4. Would have had the straight wing, the tip tank, and be familiar to anybody who saw The Bridges at Toko Ri, for instance. In that film, they used the Panther jet, F9F. The Navy went back to Grumman and said they wanted swept wings. They wanted something that could be transonic. And at the time, this is early jet aviation, and also the infancy of putting jets aboard carriers. They were still using straight deck carriers when this aircraft came online. And sweeping the wings, obviously that alters its low speed capability, and what you need to land on a carrier is the ability to be in stable flight even at lower speeds. Also, jet engines at that time were not what they are today. Spooling up a jet engine and powering it down and bleeding energy and all that stuff, you know, it was a lot different. You know, you had to be way, as a pilot, way in front of the airplane and make small adjustments to the throttle to maintain control. Sudden power up or sudden power down of the jet engine in those days could kill the engine. Literally just flame it out. And now you're flying a brick. So this is the infancy of NavAir jet aircraft, late 50s jet airplane. It's also in the same era of model kit. It was, you know, just at that cutting edge of that design period, technological design period for not just the United States, but you know, for the globe. We weren't making anything more sophisticated than this at the time. And then and it's also an example of that period, for the same period for model design, model building. So that kind of makes this more significant to me. So at any rate, I just wanted to share that. This is the next kit. It's die cut. I half expected it to be print wood. If you're familiar with the builds that I've done so far, the Flyline model, I want to say that was print wood. The Aranca was laser cut. That's the most current technology. Those pieces just literally fall off of the sheet. They're cut so precisely, and almost require no tooling at all, no blades at all to release them from the sheets. This is die crush. That's a blade that comes down and just stamps the part, not all the way through, but most of the way through the wood, but it also tends to crush a little bit of the face of the balsa sheets. Anyway, so we're going to be working with the die cut balsa this time. The kit appears to be complete, all the parts that I need. It has a ray dome, has a nice canopy. Doesn't have any decals, but the aircraft I plan to model is would have required custom decals anyway. They provided pre-bent landing gear. I'll be probably just using these for stems. I'm not going to use them completely like this. But since they're already cut and shaped to length, I can cut them off roughly here and just use them as stems, and then slide my aluminum tubing or brass tubing landing gear up onto these stems, and complete a accurate scale landing gear that way, and still use his landing gear parts, the kit designer's parts. So I plan to do that. You know, what else did I want to hit on while I'm looking at this? There's two plan sheets. This one primarily covers the fuselage shape with a side profile and a top-down view of the fuselage. And then the other sheet describes the construction of the wings and horizontal tail, and also talks about covering with the tissue and setting it up for controlled flight, free flight actually. This is pre-radio control, or at least prior to any radio control that would have ever fit into a model this size, this relatively small. So it was free flight. It would have had to be trimmed as a glider first for essentially level flight, and then the rocket incorporated. So based on what I know now, again, it gives me an extra motivation to try to do the best work I can do. The version of this airplane, it's an F9F-8. The way they have it described is as the Blue Angels Cougar. I won't be doing a Blue Angels airplane. I'll probably build this, something more like that, as far as how I'm going to paint it up. You know, most likely this skull and crossbones squadron. We use that insignia and so on. I've seen a few different renditions. One has a shark mouth here. So there's a couple of different ways to go. I wanted to model it in this configuration, gear down, dirty, what they call it, a dirty, with the flaps down, the gear down, air brakes deployed, flaps deployed, and all that. So that's probably how I'll build it. Canopy I should be able to have the canopy posed, or even I might be able to make it slide. I don't know. If I can, that's what I would do. Make it a sliding canopy. Anyway, this is our next project for the channel. American Telasco Limited Grumman F9F Cougar, and that's going to be our next deal. Hopefully soon. Get started on this one pretty soon. Thanks. Have a good day.